Hi, I'm Mitch, and welcome to the Restoration Road, where my guest today is my longtime friend and mentor, Denny Howard. You know, Denny's insights and his story are powerful. So I invite you to sit back, relax, and take in this amazing story and the powerful insights and teachings of Denny Howard. Denny, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, it's good to be here with you, Mitch.
I've been looking forward to this so much.
Good.
I love your insights, and I love the story you're going to share. You had two catalysts to becoming a counselor. Can you share those stories?
Yeah, we always have defining events in our life that really sometimes seem like bad things, but over the long duration, we find out that they were very meaningful experiences. When I was 9 years old, I had a friend down the street with the same first name. He went by Dennis, I went by Denny. And we played together a lot. And one day we were wrestling, and he said, I don't feel so good. And I said, what's wrong? And he goes, my stomach kind of hurts. And I said, okay. He said, well, I'm going to go home. I said, okay, I'll see you tomorrow. And the next day, he was dead.
Oh, my goodness.
And he had had an appendix burst. And I thought in my little 9-year-old mind, I killed my friend. And I just didn't understand what appendicitis was about.
Sure.
And really, that wasn't the defining moment as much as a moment that I had with his mother a few days later.
What was that?
And we'd gone to the funeral, and again, I couldn't quite get my mind around that, but there's a room full of adults in a house, and I'm sitting on a couch by myself, and I don't know if I really felt grief. I was just kind of confused. I didn't know what to do, but I remember his mother, her name was Goldie. She turned around and knelt in front of me on the couch, and it's almost like I can still feel her hand on my cheek. And she'd been crying. She said, you know, Dennis is okay. He's with the Lord. And I thought, she just lost her son, and she's trying to make me feel okay about this. I didn't know what the word console was at 9 years old, but she's trying to console me. And little did I know, that had a huge impact on who I become.
Wow.
And how I begin to think about people and notice life and situations.
That's powerful. A couple years later, you have another defining moment.
Yeah, the second defining moment that, again, I didn't know at the time, but as I look back, gave a lot of definition to who I am and what I do and what my call and mission and vision is in life. There's a youth pastor at our church. He's an interim youth pastor, and he was a seminary student, so he's just there for part of the year. For one school year doing his training. And I was 11, I couldn't be in the youth group. So I was kind of like the fly that wouldn't go away. I hung around him and I liked him. And, I thought he was funny. He's really affirming of me. I just thought, this is who I want to be like. I just thought he's a really cool guy. And it was time for him to go back to seminary. And then I heard a few weeks later that he had taken his life.
Oh, my.
And I just couldn't, again, it's the same thing. I just don't get this. I can't seem to get my mind around this. And,
how did those two events lead you educationally then, like through what you're thinking about, what you're going to do in the future career-wise, high school, college?
The defining moment wasn't the death of that youth pastor. The defining moment was in the backseat of a car with my father driving, my mother in the passenger seat. And I'd been just thinking, not saying anything, which was unusual to not be saying anything. You know me, if you're not paying me, I love to talk. You have to pay me to listen. I'm pretty good at it, but you got to pay me.
That is
But
awesome.
anyway, I'm sitting in the back seat, unusually quiet, and I just say, Dad, Mom, about our youth pastor, I don't get that. I just can't. I can't get my mind around that, as is in adult language of what I was trying to say. And my mom said something that changed everything for me. She said, Denny, there's always a story we don't know. And she says, there's some stories we won't know until we're with the Lord, and it may not make any difference at that point. But that just kind of was burned in my mind, and it set the pace to become an observer of people.
Wow.
And people don't wake up saying, my goal today is to be stupid or obnoxious or annoying to other people. It just comes naturally for them, you know? And so the way I keep from being judgmental towards people is I always say to myself, there's always a story you don't know. I don't think anybody wakes up in the morning saying, today I want to be annoying to the people around me. I want to do stupid things. I want to wreck my life. Nobody goes to the marriage altar saying, hey, I'm really going to screw up this marriage. Nobody holds a newborn in their arms saying, wow, I'm going to really mess this kid up. It just comes natural for some people to do so, and we all make mistakes. And so for me, the theme around being a counselor is there's always a story you don't know. And so the goal becomes to fully understand the story. When you really go after the story, people feel valued.
That is powerful. So I imagine as you go through school and sports like high school, you're observing people more and more, and you're thinking that from time to time there's a story you don't know. How do you decide what you're going to do for college?
Well, I actually started out, I grew up in a home where we were poor, but one thing that we had to do is we had to have music lessons. You know, we had to have piano lessons. You had to learn the piano, and you had to learn blank, some other instrument. And it was like brushing our teeth or making our bed. It was just a part of life. And so I went to college, didn't have any money, but I got a scholarship. For 2 years in college, I had a full ride on performing and composing. Then I got bored with it and just changed majors, which means the second 2 years I didn't have paid for.
You can still play?
Oh yeah, I love to play.
Denny, that's awesome.
Piano. Yeah.
So 2 years you got to pay for college. What happens?
Well, I did the other two. I changed to psychology and counseling, and which was radically different. Had to play catch up, but I did not want to be in ministry. And this guy named Sam was trying to recruit me to go into youth ministry. And I said, I don't want to do it. And he called me a chicken. He says, you're afraid to do run-throughs in the school and you're afraid to fundraise. And I did it for 1 year to prove him wrong. And then 40 years later, I'm working with people in ministry.
That is awesome. What took you to Germany?
I had a friend who went to Germany working, the positions there were like being a chaplain, but we were civilians. And the Army, United States Army, is the largest employer of civilians of any corporation in America.
Oh my goodness.
If they don't have military, they have the right MOS. What they do is they hire civilians. And so we were civilians, so I could have my beard, I could have my longer hair, and worked with youth that were children of military, of diplomats, of Department of Defense schools, of intelligence, that kind of thing, that were in the Department of Defense schools. And so I did that. I loved the outdoors. We were an hour from Austria and Switzerland. I loved rock climbing and kayaking and mountaineering and ice climbing and skiing and stuff like that. So I went there. 6 months later, married my precious wife of 37 years almost. And we both loved that. She loved the hiking and
it is so beautiful.
Even tried the hand gliding and that kind of thing at least once. She has
No
only tried anything once.
That is awesome. You, I think from grad school, you had this idea, and it's the beginning of Live Styles, which has become this incredible assessment. And you said you had to establish reliability and validity.
Yes.
You talk about that, what Live Styles is, and then what those two elements mean.
You'll probably lose the audience if we talk too much about validity and reliability, but there's a lot of things on the internet where you can take this little survey or inventory and tells you about your personality and that kind of thing. But it's back to the same old thing. There's always a story you don't know. There's always things you can learn. I love to measure things, and I love to measure dynamics that surround people's lives. And so something that really bothered me was when I saw in churches and ministry, some of the people working there, I'm going, is this the best we can do? There's got to be a way without breaking the bank that ministries and nonprofit organizations can find good people and know who they're really hiring. For example, the three oddest places I've been in working in functioning is a psych ward, a seminary, and graduate school in psychology. And I just look around and say, oh, this can't be the future of our church and our psychology profession. And so I began building assessments. It was kind of a tall order that the department was willing to give their blessing if I was willing to build an assessment that had validity and reliability, which means it really does measure what it pertains to measure, and it is reliable over time. And so I built it, and they kind of give their conditional blessing if I establish validity and reliability, which took another 6 years.
Wow.
Because I was trying to make a living, and this was kind of a hobby. But really what I wanted to do is help people helping professions find good people that were serving others. And it evolved into really team building, helping people understand themselves. But it really started out trying to help nonprofits be able to select good people and know what the best time to fire somebody is before you hire them.
There you go.
And so you got to hire good people.
Yeah.
And so that's what it was about. But what I found out is customers use live style assessments for many purposes and not just for the selection of employees. And that's been kind of fun to see that be somewhat customer driven. They're saying, can we measure this? And that's a challenge to me. Sure, I'll build an assessment where we can measure things like how people solve challenges or how they make decisions different from one another.
I took the assessment. I loved it.
Did you?
Oh, I
Good.
thought it was really insightful.
Was it you?
Yes.
Good.
Yes, you did a great job.
Yeah.
Denny, at 28, you had a traumatic experience. I'd like you to share that.
Yeah, it's one of those other defining moments that really kind of set the direction of the trajectory into your future. Debbie and I lived in Europe. We were doing the youth ministry, and something we love to do is rock climbing and mountaineering. And I'm talking about sheer face climbing. And some people go, why would you do that? When you look 3,000 feet between your heels and giant trees look like grass, you might go, oh man, why, I can't even go up in a tall building and look out, over the side. What you label as butterflies, those of us who love to climb go, don't you just love that feeling in your stomach? I mean, when you're looking down, you go, and your foot slips and the rope goes taut. Don't you just love that feeling, that rush? And so that adrenaline rush, to some people, they label as, that's the coolest feeling. And others go, that's just sheer terror.
I think that's where I am.
But we like that. And we had an experience where we spent a week in Zermatt, Switzerland, and we did a lot of climbing and tuning up our skills. And we had some young climbers who were very good. I mean, some of them who could climb a pitch leaning towards them slightly. They could lean out and they would reach around and pull themselves around. But we did the Matterhorn, and it was a beautiful day. And we start up, and it's one day to this hut where you can stay. And the next day, there's a sheer face wall that people put their lamps on their head to help others go up. And you kind of have to wait in line to go up that steep wall. But what happened that day is a storm formed around the mountain, two fronts, and the temperature dropped to 40, 50 degrees in about 20 minutes.
Oh my.
And we were heading down to a safe area when lightning struck in that area. And we were struck by lightning, knocked unconscious. 4 people from another group died. One of our climbers was unconscious, about 45 minutes. So we had to climb down with him, dragging him along like a suitcase. And we didn't know exactly when he was going to come to. And so that was a real defining moment. And little did I know that even in later years, I'd begin to develop a neurological problem, probably caused by getting hit by lightning.
Really? Well, as you're pursuing the Live Styles thesis and counseling, you notice that nonprofit leaders, ministry caregivers, they needed a lot of help. And how did that change the trajectory of your career?
Yeah, well, again, the live style assessments, there's 5 of them. There's live style for work, there's live style for ministry, there's live style for marriage, there's live style for teens, and there's live style for Christian teens. And they cover things like personality, how you process information, your conflict style, how you make decisions, how you solve problems, your motivation, why and how motivation. And so that's just kind of there's a story you don't know, and I want to find it out. And so I wanted to find objective ways to really measure it. And so building assessments is really kind of a complicated thing. And then when you're talking about translating to other languages, you have to look at differences in culture and stuff like that. And so I really feel like that's part of God's work in my life that will keep giving after I'm gone.
That's powerful. And you've ministered in your counseling profession to something like 6,000 or more ministry leaders?
Yeah. Oh, I stopped counting at 6,000 because that was the end of a research project that was 14 years long. And so
Denny.
it's probably 6,500, 7,000, but I stopped counting then because you had to measure everything then. And that was about predictive load times in the life of ministry workers, humanitarian workers, missionaries, people like that. And so
you found, you discovered through your research that every 6 or 7 years, we're going to have one of those low points?
Yeah. We call it crosshairs. They're predictive low times that are marked by 4 things. A lack of resiliency. It's like you're a good basketball, but it's deflated, so you don't bounce very well. You don't shoot very well. So lack of resiliency, lack of satisfaction in the career that you may have trained 4 to 8 years to do. The third criteria that was true of all the people in these low times is they seem to lack vitality emotionally, relationally, spiritually, mentally. Their batteries are just on low charge. And the last one is there a loss of clear vision for their future. And it isn't necessarily circumstantial. They're low times, and we found out that they're cyclic. Most of anything in the universe has cycles to it.
Yeah.
But all in all, it was about within a half year of 6 to 7 years. 6 to 7 years in their career, every 6 to 7 years, every 6 to 7 years in a position in their career, and every 6 to 7 years in their marriage. And that sounds weird, except when you correlate with marriage research, longitudinal studies by Dr. John Gottman, one of the leading researchers, the divorce rate, the first divorce rate is at a peak at 6.4 years.
That is
And then 13.2 years, and then 21 to 22 years is the third
dead on
period that people have these low times that it's kind of like doing a whitewater rafting trip, and at certain points you're going to get to very rough waters. And so the research was about how do you identify those, and then what can you do to navigate those rough waters during those low times? When I speak to groups, they'll go, "Oh, you're talking about me. I changed jobs at 6.5 years. I quit this one at 12 years. My wife left me at 22 years." And they'll go, "Wow, that was true." And when 3 or 4 of these crosshairs line up a person, there's a high likelihood that there may be a moral failure.
I'm evaluating how I've processed maybe about every 7 years. Am I doing the right thing? Do I still have vision for this?
That's how you evaluate, yeah.
Oh, I get exactly what you're saying. Well, you have a new book, Full Strength.
Yeah.
Can you talk about it? With
the help of a friend, Hugh, who's really kind of a wordsmith, and some good editors with a publishing house, they said, look, your audience are vocational people helpers, not researchers and psychologists. And so it's a hefty book, 320 pages, a 40-page online workbook to do with small groups and leadership groups. And so the first couple chapters is about the research and how does it fit you with some inventories, and am I in a crosshair? And then the last 12 to 13 chapters, so what do I do? So what? If I'm in one of these times or I'm heading into them, what can I do? And it covers areas of navigating difficult relationships, navigating moral challenges, navigating emotional challenges, family challenges, that kind of thing.
That's powerful. I can't have you here and not ask this question. Denny, why do people change?
You know, I don't think people really don't change until the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of change. They really don't. There has to be some kind of catalyst. I think we by nature want to be comfortable. We want to feel secure.
Yeah.
We want life to be satisfying. And it's that discomfort that catalyzes people to change. I do think there are some people who are very growth-oriented and they're very teachable. In other words, they have an attitude of always wanting to discover and learn that will grow because they want to grow. They just believe that there's God's highest and best and they want to pursue that even though they're doing well.
You are investing in high-capacity leaders, and I assume high-capacity leaders are more interested in change, but you have this concept of 212 degrees. Can you talk about that 1 degree?
Yeah. That's really based on a book, and for those people who don't like to read, the book's mostly pictures. so Mitch, you can read this book here. You know, it's great pictures of athletics and accomplishments and inventions, and basically the book talks about 211 water that's 211 degrees is real hot, but it won't do anything. But 1 more degree will move a loaded down locomotive across the country. And so my challenge to high capacity leaders is, what is your 1 degree? And here's how you find out your 1 degree in one of 2 ways. What do you tend to resist? Because the things we resist reveals our growth edge. We'd go, wow, that's a cliff. I don't want to look over that. And if I could say, go look over the edge, you find out the drop's only 2 inches. It's not that difficult. And the second way that people really grow is if they have a vision for what they want in the future, and they're willing to be able to have somebody hold them accountable to go through the steps it takes to get there. If you want to, for example, I'll tell a person who's, let's say they're really struggling with their weight. It's a nonprofit leader and he's really struggling with his weight. And I said, well, you know, go for a walk around the block. Do 5 push-ups. He'll go, what good would that do? And I said, well, if you walk around the block and do that for a whole year and you walk around 365 times, are you better off or worse off? If you can't do 10 push-ups, do 5. What good would that do? Well, that's almost 150 in a year. Are you better off or worse off? So incremental success is better than grand failure.
Yes.
I think here's the thing. Most people have aspirations and dreams, but they're only fantasies if you don't apply yourself with some intentionality. And so high capacity leaders because they're so gifted and so talented, it's easier to coast. If you're a good speaker, you're a good counselor, you're a good fundraiser, it's easy to just kind of coast. People go, how do you come up with all this stuff? I'm like the old mechanic. You have the $29.95 toolbox. I have the big cabinets with 64 drawers, and I know in the 14th column over and the 6th drawer down is a certain type of wrench that you need. And it's just called being old. It's a medical condition called OLD. Have you heard of it?
I sure have. Denny, you've helped so many people. You've ministered to my life in many ways. Has there ever been a situation where you weren't able to help the way you thought you could?
Yeah. I had a dear friend, a big donor to my cause that God has called me to, a kind person, a person for high capacity for kindness and love, very wealthy businessman who got sick. And he just looked like something from a concentration camp, just skin over bones. He was so thin and frail. And this was a very muscular, handsome guy that just seemed to have it all together. Good Christian man. And he just, he was really struggling. And one day I got a text from him that says, I'm so tired. I don't think I want to go on. I just want you to know that I love you and value you. And I knew what that text meant. And he sent that on my fullest day of the week, Wednesdays. I do marathon counseling and coaching almost with no breaks. And he sent that. He knew I would not respond. And I talked to him the evening before and told him I loved him and I'm praying for him. And what was hard for me was to talk hundreds of people off the cliff over the years, but I couldn't get my brother that I loved to come off the cliff. And so he decided he would take his life, which just doesn't compute. And I remember having lots of, he had colon issues. And if anybody listening needs to know this, serious colon issues also means mental health issues. The colon is 100% responsible for feeding and fueling the brain. If you have colon cancer and stuff like that, you probably do not have adequate resources for your brain to be cognitively focused, to manage your mood, to have any kind of emotional vitality. And so if I could say anything to who's listening, if you have a loved one who has colon problems, really encourage them to be wise stewards of their brain, their organic brain health too, with psychotropics or nutritional supplements or anything they can to keep their brain healthy. But it's almost impossible to have serious colon problems and to have good mental health, organically speaking. I think we can be very faithful people trusting the Lord, but mental health is as physical as any other condition in the body. So that really, I'm sure that's a very defining moment. Is I love the family that, one of his daughters called me Uncle Denny, very close to the family, very endeared to them. But I'm sure that will be very defining for me, and kind of a personal sense of how did I miss that?
Yeah. Denny, thank you so much for your transparency, and thank you for your ministry to so many. I just love you. Thank you.
Thanks.
I want to close with something Denny has said to me, and it's Psalm 46:10 says, "Be still and know that I am God." And Denny says, if you're never still, how will you ever know? So I invite you to take some time alone with God and be still and seek Him. Actively seek Him in that time. Maybe it's through His Word, it's through prayer, and then maybe fleshing that out with a close confidant, and experience the God of the universe in your life and the design that He has for you.
Hi, my name is Kelsey Herber. Join my dad and me as we continue our series on the value of vulnerability next week on the Restoration Road.
The road!